And then before we start any webinar or presentation at Royal Roads, we always acknowledge the lands that we are on. So Royal Roads University is located on the traditional lands of the Kosepsum and the Lekwungen ancestors and families who've been here for thousands of years. So we're really grateful to be able to do the work that we can do here each and every day. And as well, I'm working from home today from the traditional lands of the Quw'utsun people in the Cowichan Valley. So really just like to take this moment to acknowledge where we are, no matter where we're joining from in the world today. And with that, so today we are going to be talking all about the Doctor of Social Sciences program. My name is Christy Jones and I'm an education specialist here at the university, but I'm thrilled to be joined by some of the experts on this program. So we have Dr. Mary Bernard, who is a professor and the program head for this program. And then later on in the presentation, we will be doing a panel discussion with two of our students. So we have Adrianne Xavier and Sylvie Plante, who are here today. And we are thrilled to be having a conversation with them a little bit further on about their experience in the program. So to go through our agenda, so we'll be starting off with a brief overview of the Royal Roads University experience and what it's like to be a student with us. Then Mary will be taking us through a look at what the program is all about. Then we'll be hearing from our wonderful students. And then at the very end, we'll finish up with some of the application details and requirements that go along with that. And then I will mention we have some other folks who are helping us out behind the scenes today, helping support any questions that you might have. So we have Rhonda White, who's just introduced herself in the chat box here. So she's one of our enrollment advisors, and she is here to help if we have any questions in the chat box and things like that. And she'll also be providing links along the way. And then we also have Selena joining us. She wonderfully hit the record button for me today, and she's helping with all of our tech support needs today. So if you have any issues with technology or anything, you're welcome to send her a private message and she can help you troubleshoot with that. And then we also have from the school or the College of Interdisciplinary Studies, we have Carol Sandhu and we have Pooja here joining us as well. So we have lots of hands on deck today. And if you do have any questions for our students, for Mary, for any of us along the way, we welcome you to just use the chat box anytime a question comes up and we will be happy to answer it. Alrighty, so if you have not been on our campus before, here is a little snapshot of what it looks like. So in the top left-hand corner, we have Hatley Castle here. So this is a pretty central point on our campus, and it connects to a lot of other areas and buildings where you might be taking classes and things. It was built in the early 1900s, and it is used today as a working building. So we have staff in there right now. When it's safe to do so, there might be some events happening there, and it's also used for film projects and things like that. So in the top right-hand corner, we have the Japanese gardens. So just adjacent to the castle, we have a whole network of interconnected manicured gardens that you can explore. So the Japanese gardens is just one of them, but we also have the Italian gardens, we have the rose gardens, there's a croquet lawn, and lots of wonderful places for you to go and take a walk and, you know, ponder upon all of the things that you might be learning in your residency and things like that. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, we have Esquimalt Lagoon. So we're also right on the water, which you can kind of see in the photo behind the castle there as well. But this is a bird sanctuary. So if you like wildlife and things like that, it is a wonderful, tranquil place for you to visit. And then I will also mention, not pictured here, except a little bit around the castle again, but we are on over 500 acres of old growth forest. So if you like hiking and walking through trails and things like that, there's tons and tons of trails for you to explore. So it really is a lovely place to learn. And then on the bottom right-hand corner there, we have a bit of an ode to the fact that we have been doing online learning for over 25 years now. It's a part of who we wanted to be when we first started out the university. So it's something we are very well versed in and pride ourselves on the experience we're able to provide in a virtual setting. And we're also an Ashoka U Changemaker campus. So this is a designation that's been given to a select number of institutions, and we're really proud of it. So it means that the type of education that we provide is very entrepreneurial, it's very interdisciplinary, it's also very solutions oriented. So that is the type of themes you can expect to be infused throughout all of our programs. And they really set you up well to be able to address the challenges that we're seeing in the world today. And with that, I will pass it over to you, Mary, to take us through a little bit more about the program.
Thanks so much, Christy, and special thanks to all of you participants who have joined us today. It's a great number, and I really appreciate it. Appreciate that you are tuning in. And I'd like to thank Sylvie Plante and Adrianne Lickers for joining us today as well as graduates of the program, both recently, relatively recent graduates. This program really is quite different from any other programs you'll see in Canada. A Doctor of Social Science, I want to make it really clear that there are two types of doctorates in most of the world, including in North America. There's professional doctorates and there's PhDs. They're both called doctorates. And but there's a distinction in that the professional doctorates, as the name implied, relate to a profession, whereas the PhD is like literally a doctor of philosophy in whatever the discipline may be. And what we did is combined what we hope is the best of both of those doctorates with a professional applied degree that has a very strong research base, similar to a PhD. So just to explain that just a little bit more, if you were at University of Toronto, for example, you could do a PhD in psychology, or you could do a psychology D, a Psych D, which would be the professional degree. So it'd be one or the other, but we've tried to combine them. So it's not a PhD, it's a Doctor of Social Sciences. And the designation for your doctorate is DSocSci, and you use the title doctorate just in the same way that others do. Other doctorates in Canada and otherwise. We also are a different kind of university. We don't have any departments that are discipline-based, solely discipline-based. We don't have an English department or a biology department or an anthropology department. What we have is thematic programs divided across about 7 schools across the university. So we end up then with thematic areas that are very applied in nature, very much solution-based, and the degrees that come out of those programs are applied and solutions-oriented, which means you're really usually researching projects and issues in real time. It's not that you don't bring in the past, you certainly do, but it's ultimately to work towards real life solutions, whether it's in your sector or your community or your organization, or much larger takes that could apply to Canada as a whole, or North America or beyond as a whole. And we also really take into account your past, your current work, CV. Have you moved progressively in your career? Most of our doctoral students are pushing 50. It doesn't mean you have to be, but it sort of ends up that way because we seem to attract those people that have been in their career for some time and now are ready to go to the next level. There's one thing I want to note about PhDs and doctorates across Canada, and the same goes for the US. About 20% of people who do PhDs or doctorates work in universities as full-time faculty member. It varies a bit by discipline. The other 80% work in government and in private industry and private consulting and health and education across all of the sectors. And our degree was specifically designed for that 80%. And that doesn't mean that many of our graduates do follow do end up working full time in a tenured stream faculty position, and a lot of our applicants are individuals who currently are in teaching positions in universities but never completed a doctorate, and they feel that now is the time, or they're in colleges. And I find increasingly we're getting applicants from that sector as well. But what I do find, however, for most people, regardless if they're working for government or industry or private business, at the end of the day, many of them will continue to be affiliated with universities by teaching courses and by being involved in supervision. Thanks, Christy. We have a next slide here. Thank you. And I've listed here just some of the examples. I was going through our stats the other day, and we have almost 100 people currently in the program. We take about 18 in a year over 2 cohorts at the moment. So you can expect your cohort to be 9, 10, or 11 people or so. And those examples there of areas that are people are in, just a small example of some of the topic areas. It's as large as, it's as diverse as there are applicants. But one thing I do find, we seem to be attracting the type of applicant that this doctorate was designed for. Those people who have been in fairly senior or leadership positions and are ready to move to the next level. They are social science based, even though we have people in the environmental sciences, maybe working on climate change. It still tends to be at the interface between science and social science, where they're focusing their activity. This list could be hundreds long. This is just a sample. And I think I covered much of this off. We talked about the interdisciplinary nature of the dissertation or of the program, and therefore your dissertation will be interdisciplinary as well. We have a combination of residencies and online classes. Residencies in your first year and in your second year, they're 3 years each. they're 3 weeks each. And in between, you work with online classes. And as Christy pointed out, we've been doing distance learning for 25 years, so we're a bit of an old hand at that. The residencies, though, normally are always in person, but with COVID, the last 2 years, practically, we've been doing the online residencies as well. And, it's quite a different experience because we depend so much on having people actually be together in one room, working together from all of your different areas of research, coming together and working in many ways from a common base of the social sciences. But we really have felt quite good about the virtual residencies. On the other hand, they work. People still develop relationships with one another and with their instructors. But I have to say, I look forward to the time when we're all back in the same room again. It's cohort-based, and the intensive teaching just again refers to the residencies in particular. You might find you go for very long days during that 3-week period. And the flexible supervision model, we're a relatively small university, so we recognize that we can't always have the supervision that you may require, the particular expertise that you may require, or you may just know someone that you have been studied with in the past, and you'd like to reach out to them to see if they could supervise your work. And we're certainly open to that. They have to meet the criteria in the same way that they would have to meet it at any other university in Canada. They would have to be at the associate professor or full professor level, and they would have to have established their own research agenda so that if they're going to supervise you, we need to be sure that they have a wealth of their own research as well. Okay, it's 4 years, maybe more or maybe less. Maybe our 2 graduates might be able to comment further on that when they begin to talk. I would say very rarely less, but it has been a few times, and more often 4 years or more. The maximum is 7 years. And we already covered the delivery. It's the blended programming. Student funding. I think the best thing to say here is check these blogs that have been listed here. You'll be sent the recording, so you'll be able to look up these blogs. Basically, it's applying to the Tri-Council federal government, Tri-Council funding. It's competitive. We have an allotment based on our number of doctoral students, and the proportion is similar to what it is at other universities, except with relatively small, so the proportion may come, the quota we are given for applications, it might only be 3 or so for each of these kind of categories. And it's still competitive. You still have to compete. It's just that we're given an allotment of how many of our students can compete in many of these areas. There's one called MyTax, and that's an interesting one because we've been very successful at that one. We have no quotas, but the catch is that an organization or a nonprofit or some other entity has to pay half of the scholarship, and so it's very good from the perspective of being able to get it. We've been very successful that way, but it remains for you to find matching funds. And in these times, I've always been impressed that people have still been able to make this work for them. And but any of these questions can go directly to our financial aid department at Rural Roads. We also have a number of internal grants as well, and some of them are quite good. Like there's entrance grants of 10,000, and then there's a wealth of other smaller grants. Sometimes they may be about $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 each. But again, I'm going to emphasize that they're competitive. So at the end of the day, I'd like to be really clear that none of these are guaranteed, just as it is when you apply for grants at other universities. None of these are guaranteed. So you really want to be prepared if you're seriously thinking of taking the degree, be prepared to self-fund it. We are a public university, but it is an expensive degree.
Alrighty, this is our last slide before we dive into the conversation, Mary. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And just a note that Rhonda has popped in a few helpful links about financial aid in the chat box if you'd like to learn more.
Oh, that's great. So this is the time then I introduced Adrianne and Sylvie?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, it's my great pleasure, truly so, to introduce Adrianne. Adrianne is a recent graduate, and she will be telling you more about the work that she did in relation to community. I'm going to give it the broad title of community well-being. Adrianne is an Indigenous scholar, and we just felt so fortunate to have her take our program. And the second person is Sylvie Plante, and I guess I can call them Dr. Adrianne Lickers Xavier and Dr. Sylvie Plante. And Sylvie did a dissertation by portfolio. Her work is in the, I'm going to call it broadly, the management of innovation, but a fascinating take on it. And I'll just put it right over to you, Adrianne, to give us some comments on your experience.
Thanks, Mary. As she mentioned, I am Dr. Adrianne Lickers Xavier. I am, and when she says newly graduated, very newly. The program is 4 years or more, and I will just tell you a little bit of the story of why mine took a little bit of extra time. So I also did a portfolio dissertation. My original plan was not to do that. I had full intentions of doing a formal research program. I started out with Royal Roads actually in 2012 as a master's student. And liked it so well that I went from the International Intercultural Communications Masters directly into the Doctor of Social Sciences program, which truthfully, both of them were exactly what I didn't know I wanted, but have worked out absolutely perfectly. I was in the middle at the time of running an Indigenous food security and food sovereignty program in my community of Six Nations. I'm here in Southern Ontario. It answered all of the questions for me of being able to do something in my community, which was really needed and important, while also taking that professional piece of looking at the funding, the theories behind, and the understanding of what I needed to know more about, while also having that often necessary credibility when you're asking for funds from larger corporations and organizations operating a nonprofit type organization. So for me, it was really very much what I was hoping would be is exactly how it turned out. The format was ideal for me because, like I said, I was working full time, having to go to Victoria for 3 weeks. The first 2 years was just absolutely one of the best experiences for me ever. Aside from the campus itself and the Esquimalt Lagoon, and the campus really gives you the opportunity to immerse yourself in the education that is being offered, but also to immerse yourself in the cohort that they create. Getting to know your classmates and building not just a support system for the schoolwork, but for after that. I keep in touch with my classmates from the master's up into the doctoral program. It really has been, as I moved forward, very impactful for me in that way. What happened at the end of my third year, coming into my fourth year, what should have been my very last year of my dissertation work, I actually lost my job where I was doing all of my research out of. So all of those programs and the research, the talking circles, the the focus groups, the interviews that I had planned to do at my job, to answer all those questions of what food sovereignty and what food security looked like from within my community, suddenly were not possible because the program was being closed. What happened for me was I was, and to this day, I'm very extremely grateful. My committee took this in fantastic stride, and consequently so did I. I was given the opportunity at that point to change from that monograph style of traditional dissertation to, let's change the story and let you tell yours. So I didn't at the time I didn't understand the magnitude of what that really meant for me, but being able to have an Indigenous woman tell her story in the medium that is traditional to my culture changed my education. And it has changed the education for a lot of people that I know since then, because my supervisor, Dr. Deb McGregor, who is actually out of York University and Osgoode Law School, said, "You're very good at telling us the story. Why don't you take the information that you have?" And one of the first things that I was told when I started the doctoral program was keep notes, write a journal, keep track of the things you've done. And so I did, and I went back and I used them, and they became part of my data. They became part of how I understood what I needed to share. And I really, I got to tell stories. My portfolio is a journal article about my own theoretical framework, which I used a cultural framework, and it's based on a mound garden. So I'm Haudenosaunee. I sit with the Mohawk Wolf Clan, and I'm an Onondaga as well. And it meant to me that I was able to use what I knew culturally and personally to share with other people what I was trying to explain about the program I had run, about the work that had been done in my community, and what we were doing as a group. The other things that I did were a series of short podcasts, literally telling my story. I also was able to then take a video of an experience that I got to have as well as part of this program. I was one of the inaugural 5 pre-doctoral fellows at Queen's University here in Ontario for Indigenous scholars to do those final stages of their work. So I got to be part of that program, and I did a talk there on gender, culture, and community, and not just as it related to food security and food sovereignty, but as it related to running nonprofits and decolonization and reconciliation. And truthfully, all of those, and now I understand the very large interdisciplinary pieces that really went along with that. Thanks, Shelley. I've gotten really good at reading the chat while I am on Zoom, because I will tell you guys this. Mary is right. Our program, and I say our program is designed for people who are doing things. When Royal Road says that their motto is life not changing, you don't really know how much that is true and can be true. But for me, it absolutely was. I, on the other hand, ended up being one of those 20%. And I am actually currently the director of the Indigenous Studies program at McMaster University in Southern Ontario. And next year, once my contract portion of this piece of the director's job ends, I will start my tenure track position in Indigenous Studies and anthropology there. I call myself an accidental academic because I truly believed that when I was starting this program and when I did this, that I was going to be able to feed my community, that I was going to provide, income and real world changes and actual food to my community. And what I've come to understand is that what I really have started to do is feed people with other things. My mom is a master gardener. She teaches an ecological knowledge class for me at McMaster. And I have lived that way my entire life, knowing, what it takes to feed yourself and the empowerment that goes along with that. So I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. But the the support system that I got from Royal Roads really just gave me the opportunity to understand that what I really enjoy and what I love to do is to share knowledge with people. And it's a different kind of feeding the world. And truthfully, I'm very happy with that. I'm not a fantastic gardener, despite my mom's like fervent hopes and wishes. But the one thing that I will say for me is there are a couple of other pieces that I really want you guys to know as a now academic running a department in a university. One of the greatest gifts that I received, and I say gifts, was the ability to learn, take part in, and then also teach. So I've taught a couple of times at Royal Roads in their online courses. And when COVID hit, I was the only instructor in my program who had ever taught online, who had ever taken online classes, and who had ever been part of a program that helped students to transition. So I knew how to help build a cohort. I understood what it meant to bring students together and have classmates connect with each other virtually, and what they needed to do to help them keep that semblance of balance when you're trying to be in school online and living your life and having a lot of really stressful things going on. I didn't plan for them to be COVID, but that is how it turned out. And I have absolutely become more grateful as time passes of the opportunity that I got at Royal Roads to learn in different ways and to acknowledge that I learned differently than other people. And this was definitely the best option for me. I'm going to stop there because I can tell stories all day, but I definitely am excited to hear Sylvie's story, because we were in our the same cohort when we started, actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Adrianne. I didn't realize until just now that you were in the same cohort. So that's a happy coincidence. that was just a wonderful rendition of everything, Adrianne. Thank you so much. Sylvie?
Yeah, it's so great. It's just so great to listen to Adrianne, because back in 2015 when we both started, in our very first class, we start out with our vision, sharing that online in that residency. And it's great to see that journey. So what I'd like to propose, I'd like to say a little bit about, what I did, the dissertation by portfolio, what my academic background was, and why I chose to do this. But I thought one of the things that might be helpful for people wanting to apply to the program is to share a couple of things that I had expected from the program and that came true. A couple of things that I didn't expect and that were like opportunities, a little bit like the accidental academic that Adrianne talked about, and then a couple of things that were unexpected but were challenges. And so, and I'm saying this again from my own perspective, and you can see when you hear what I have to say versus what Adrianne had to say, we're all very unique, and the fact that the program is enabling such different people to come together and learn together just shows how much variation there can be. And so basically, my as Mary had introduced, I did a doctoral degree on the intersection of innovation and social capital in public-private partnerships. It was a dissertation by portfolio, so we had the mandatory journal article, which has to be publishable. It doesn't have to be published before you finish, but it has to be ready for kind of publication in terms of the quality. And then I also did, with Mary's encouragement, an online learning module, as well as a video that I did as applied research with a not-for-profit organization called the Canadian Parks Collective for Innovation and Leadership. I came to the DSocSci with a master's in organizational management and development from Fielding University, which is in the States, also blended learning. I also had a Bachelor of Administration from the University of Ottawa, and I have a certificate in human resources management from McGill University. I live in Ottawa. I'm a professional consultant. I've been consulting for many years, and I was interested to do the doctoral degree because I wanted to have that, deeper expertise to enable me to expand even further my consulting practice as although in my age group, a lot of people are retiring, I see myself kind of continuing on to something else. So I saw the doctoral degree as a basis for that. And so some things that I expected that came true is, what Mary said earlier about everything she said about the interdisciplinary nature, about it's applied, it's solution oriented. This was true. And you can, it's not just a promo or marketing, it's really true. And also what Adrianne mentioned about the online learning and community that gets developed and the value of being able to participate in that, all that in my experience was true. Another thing is I expected to deepen my knowledge and to increase my thinking ability. And I say that it's like an Olympics for mental agility. And now I feel very confident having conversations with anybody about anything. And that's wonderful. And so that's another thing. And also I expected this to be an opportunity to expand my consulting, right? And as a result, this is the case. In addition to organizational development, strategic HR and ethics, now I do a lot more around innovation and partnerships and what I studied. So this is really great. Things that were unexpected is I had an opportunity to really participate in campus life at Royal Roads, because I got also to teach in the School of Business and teach online and teach on campus. And this, I felt as a result of that, I got to meet more people, more students, more faculty, and I feel a stronger connection to university. Now, not everyone has that opportunity, but it was very valuable to me. Another thing that you might all encounter is the receptiveness of people, whether it's research participants or people in your work or in your personal life, to the fact that you're pursuing this doctoral degree, because it turns out that there are many, many people who secretly have this wish of doing this doctoral education. And when they see you doing it, they really, they're interested in it and they want to share. And so you have all of a sudden a whole new network of people that want to connect with you as a result of you being a doctoral student. So, and to support you as well, whether it's on your committee as a research participant or other ways. So that's really positive. Another thing I realized, and I think this may be relevant for this group of people on this call, because we have people from all over the world. And I found that the doctoral degree enabled me to really expand internationally my network as a result of the topics that I research, innovation and all of that, and entrepreneurship. And so that was a real asset and unexpected, because now I really feel that I have a much more global network. So those were all unexpected or positive. And again, I'll share what were some of the unexpected but challenges for me in my own experience. And so when Mary said, again, listen to everything that Mary said, listen very carefully. She said, be prepared to self-fund your degree. I had actually worked as an employee at NSERC and SHRC, which give funding, and I figured I could apply. But the fact that when we apply in mid-career without publication, it really limits your ability to get academic funding. Some people do get it, but it does limit. I keep getting that. And so that was a little bit unexpected. I thought that might be accessible. Another thing that was a surprise is, again, as Mary mentioned, 80% of the people do not work in academia. And so as a result, you have to plan your career. So as you transition from the beginning to the end of your degree, your career is going to transform. You will become transformed in the way you think and the way you talk and what you do. And you really need support to transition into whatever that future is of your work, whether it's in the same job, in the same organization, or completely different. You need help. But in my experience, the program did not provide that. You have to manage that for yourself. They give career transition support to people doing bachelor's degree. But in this case, because we're all so different, there's no real, standardized support for career. So be prepared to manage that. I'm very grateful that I kept working and consulting. That made my degree longer, but as a result, I just, defended my dissertation, turned around and kept working. Third thing that was unexpected, again, my personal experience, with a doctoral degree, if I apply for a consulting project and I say I have a doctoral degree, I will get less money than if I don't say it. A master's degree is worth more than a doctoral degree for the same work, because as a researcher, I will get 20% of the same work as I get as a consultant. It's still fascinating to me. And so again, my personal experience, but over more than one experience, is that you don't do it for the money, is my experience. But definitely it has expanded my possibilities. So that's my sharing.
Oh, I think you're just on mute, Mary.
Oh, right. Thanks so much, Adrianne and Sylvie. I just want to, just before we open it up for questions, I just want to key into the some of the ideas that Sylvie put out there, because I really I encourage the ideas that she put out there, which are, you know, cautions, like don't give up your day job. You know, this degree is meant for people to be working. And you know, there may be times that you might have to take off during, you know, as for an extended vacation while you're trying to get the dissertation out the door, prepare for the candidacy exam. But by and large, you're meant to be working, quite literally. And the other thing is that you should feel free to call me, like email me, and I can always set up a Zoom meeting to talk to you. And if you're thinking about the degree, and don't be surprised if I spend as much time giving the the cons as the pros, because it's really, really important to understand that if you're going to devote, it's not only the money, but it's 4 or more years of your life. It's a long time, and that's an intensive period of time to give of your life and your energy and your family and of your friends. So it's a huge decision. And the other thing that I often talk about is, you know, is it the right fit for you? So I would describe this degree as competitive, but part of that is that in the conversations with me, it's not that I say, please don't apply, but it's that I really, really want people to be sure when they apply that it's the right degree for them. I personally, you know, love the degree, obviously, or I wouldn't be involved. But some people are more suited to a more traditional degree, where they, you know, study a traditional PhD. It might be more theory-based. Ours is theory-based as well, but you're operating at a different level. The 80% still applies, though, across the board in Canada. You know, it's a relatively small number of people who end up in working for universities. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Christy to monitor questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all of you for that intro. That was so great to hear your different perspectives and really build a picture about what is it like to be a student in this program. Just to look at the chat box here, one of the questions we did have is, does your research have to be interdisciplinary? So with any of these questions, it's for anybody who would like to answer them or has any insights, or maybe even sharing your experience with doing research through an interdisciplinary lens. So I'll hand that over to you.
I hope perhaps Adrianne and Sylvia can pick up on expanding this, but the short answer is yes, it has to be interdisciplinary.
Now, let me just say that that doesn't necessarily mean what everybody thinks either. My work is very often considered interdisciplinary, but it does not stop me from being very centrally focused in anthropology or Indigenous studies, or also, and here's the thing, like I said, as an academic, I've also taught in women and gender studies. I've also taught in courses that are related to very specific disciplines. So understanding that part of the draw of having interdisciplinary, no matter what, is that you are getting a larger or a wider perspective. It doesn't mean that your focus of your research is not very specific. You could very specifically study food security, food sovereignty, or something, you know, pointed, but the way that railroads will bring you to it is interdisciplinary. It doesn't mean that the topic itself is interdisciplinary. Your research is still always going to be your research, but you are going to be taught all of the tools that you need to do it in an interdisciplinary way.
What I would add to that is that when you're doing interdisciplinary research and you do your literature review, and you're focusing on a particular solution that has multiple dimensions, the literatures you'll draw on will be from, you know, different disciplines. So it might be perhaps more time consuming, and you'll have to struggle with the fact that the same concept may be defined differently in different disciplines. So you have to, you know, go back and forth on that. And then there's a reflection there around who's going to be on your committee, and will they be, even though they're not experts in all of these areas, will they be able to have conversations with you about these things? And so those are things to take into consideration.
Perfect. Thank you all. Another question we had was just somebody wanting to know more about the residency in general. So perhaps, what did you actually do in the residency? What was it like? What were some big takeaways from those experiences?
Again, let me put it back to Adrianne and Sylvie. They were actually in those residencies. I wasn't at the time, other than as a visitor.
Go ahead, Adrianne.
Okay, so I'm going to start first off by saying that the residency is an opportunity for you to build that cohort. You get to know your classmates, you get to know their research, you get to understand in a broad way what you've spent the first 3 weeks of class learning about the topics that you might cover and the focus of the classes. But when you get to campus, you get to really see what the potential is for a program like this, because I would never have thought, honestly, like Sylvie being a consultant, I didn't really think about that as a focus of my work, though it turned out to be. I also got to know one of our classmates was actually from, and I'm just looking at Michael because his name is popped up. One of our classmates when our cohort started was from Nigeria. So there is opportunities for this to be a very international, global program. The residency itself is that time when you go back to grade school. You're in school, 5 days a week, morning to afternoon. You take breaks, you talk, you learn, and you really get to dig into what the coursework that you've been doing online for a few weeks. You actually get those chances to have an in-person or a face-to-face conversation about them, because it's very different to read a topic than it is to discuss it with a classmate. So those 3 weeks are very much aligned for that. I had some suggestions, which for myself, when I did the residency, I chose to live off campus and I rented a car, partly because I was very fortunate to have assistance with the funding of my program. I didn't have to self-fund. I will say this though, I obviously like the program enough. A very dear friend of mine who lives about 7 minutes away from me is currently enrolled in this particular program right now as a student. And she's just finished her residency, which was virtual. It still gave her the same opportunity. She still had that chance to be online with her classmates, taking those particular classes for those 3 weeks where she really got to dig into it. And as a result, we have had huge, great conversations about, what she's really wanting to do with her research. So that's the school portion of it. The residency itself, truthfully, is about immersing yourself in Royal Roads, spending the time. The doctoral program as well, when we started, we were the only students who actually had classes inside Hatley Castle, which for a million and one reasons is fantastic. But it just gives you the chance to be a student, take that brief, very brief moment in time. 3 weeks out of a couple of years, twice, is really a small, very small window. Be the student, ask the questions, spend the time, and give yourself the space, because the campus is beautiful, to actually be in the world of that part of your education.
Yeah, the only thing I will add is really to emphasize the exploration of the physical campus when it is possible to do so. One of our profs, Adrianne, you'll remember, took us into the garden, and we visited the garden and then the trails. I was one of the people who stayed, and there was also an opportunity at the time with another cohort to actually go off campus and go up the coast. So I would say take every opportunity to explore the land that the campus is on while you're there.
Thank you. That's wonderful. A question that I'll quickly answer, I see in the chat is, when you say meant for people to be working, does this mean maintaining a full-time job while doing the degree is possible? And yes, that is, yeah, what the program is designed for. So definitely doable. Another question, what is the average time it takes to complete the degree, and has that changed since COVID? So I know 4 years is kind of a rough mark, but is there, you know, tend to be folks who take longer or people who more often can take it shorter? I guess speaking to that a little bit would be awesome.
So normally it doesn't take shorter, although there's been a few. You know, Carol may have more specific information. She's on here today, or Pooja, but I find that it takes at least 4, often 5, and sometimes beyond. But people tend to aim for the 4 and then maybe get delayed by a year or so. But often people are doing it in the 4 years. Christy, I saw a question on if you had to have a supervisor in advance, and maybe I could just answer that. The answer is no. After the first residency, you get a supervisor for a directed study, but the supervisors for the committee do not happen until the end of the second residency. And part of it is the interdisciplinary nature of the degree. It takes time, you know, as was noted here in terms of the discussion of interdisciplinarity. You want to bring together those 3 people that are going to best serve you for the different aspects of your research, and they may be from different disciplines coming together. It's never too early to start thinking about it, but you have that full year before you settle to your supervisor. And while I still have the floor, I should mention that Rhonda White is also on here today with admissions. And if you're interested in speaking further about the degree, I would suggest that you speak to Rhonda first, and she'll give you everything that you need to know about the program, and then you speak to me in relation to your research ideas.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary. And just acknowledging the time here. So sorry if we didn't get to some questions, but I thought a really great final question perhaps for you, Sylvie and Adrianne, something I'm always curious about is just, what is next for both of you? What do you hope to come from this, and perhaps how might you use your research or what you took away from the program in where you're going next?
Go ahead, Adrianne.
Well, like I said, as the new accidental academic that I've become, I have the opportunity at the moment, because our program is leveling into department status in my university, and I'm in the process of then helping my school to develop a grad program. I'm using my education and all of the experiences that I got to bring the best parts for me into my new role. The other thing is I'm still using I'm still examining and expanding the relationships that I have with people from the school in my life, in my work, in my research, because the number of people that I've met from school and since then, where I'm like, these are connections that can be made. I am constantly telling people about, you know, the experience I had at Royal Roads, what it was like, what the master's program was like for me, and just giving people if nothing else, the opportunity to know that education doesn't have to look the way that we have always thought that it did, because it doesn't always, because Royal Roads offers something more than that. So for me, that's what I'm doing that all the time.
That's good. Well, in my case, of course, I'm continuing with my consulting practice, but completing the doctoral degree is not an end, it's really a beginning. It opens a door to a new kind of more academically or scholarly kind of practice. And so I'm continuing that with a collaboration with an organization, with a MyTax, a MyTax funded application to do applied research related again to, but it related to digital collaboration networks in social purpose organizations. And also, because something to keep in mind is, again, with that whole monetization aspect, you only have a small window to kind of monetize your doctoral completion after you do it to get academic funding. So I'm trying to do that within that window, and we'll see. And maybe eventually the funding I get from my scholar work will be the same as my consulting work. That's my goal.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so great to hear what you're going to be up to next. And that's a really good piece of advice as well, Sylvie, for really taking advantage of that while you can. So with that, I'm going to bring the slides up again to discuss the admissions criteria a little bit more. We've had a number of questions surrounding that. So we may go a little bit over time, but if you do have to leave, again, you're welcome to catch up a little bit later. But thank you so much, Adrianne and Sylvie, for being here for today and for sharing your experience. It was so helpful for even just me to continue learning about the program. And I think everyone else really appreciated it who was here today as well. And Mary too, for, as always, sharing your wisdom about the program and everything that people will need to know when they're wanting to apply. So very much appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Okay, so if you'll all just bear with me for a moment, I'm going to share my screen again and go through some of the application criteria. Alrighty, so for admissions, here are some of the requirements. So firstly, a master's degree in one of the social sciences or a related field is required. Evidence of experience related to the degree program, normally a minimum of 10 years with senior level decision-making authority. And then an interdisciplinary applied research proposal that reflects current research foci and in the College of Interdisciplinary Studies or the schools within the Faculty of Social Sciences and Applied Sciences at Royal Roads University. And again, if you're wondering how that will look for you, you're welcome to have a conversation with Rhonda from our enrollment team and Mary as well. And then for the how to apply aspect of it, so to begin the process, there is an online application fee of $126.28 to start off the process. And then there is some supporting documents to be submitted along with that. So the first one on here is official transcripts. Those do need to arrive from whichever previous institutions you've attended, sealed to us. So yeah, it's best to just have those directly sent over to Royal Roads University. And as well, because of COVID-19, some institutions are doing emailed transcripts, and that is totally okay too. We will accept those due to the situation that we are still encountering in the world today. And then the next one on here is a writing sample. So this could be, say, a thesis chapter, an academic or professional report or publication. So that is something you'll want to submit. And then as well, just above that, I missed the detailed resume. So this can be quite a bit longer than a typical job application resume, I would say, because we really want you to include everything that will be applicable to your eligibility. So of course, your work experience, volunteer experience, educational background, anything like that, but any specific projects you've worked on that you want to speak to or different experiences that you think would be relevant, this is a great place to add that there. And then as well, we have the 3 letters of reference. So that, again, it's best if those are able to come directly from whoever is referring you. So we can receive those from their email address, and we can confirm who they are a little bit more, and make sure that it's not somebody that is like a friend or your mom or things like that. That is not ideal for a reference, of course, but to have those be sent directly to us is great. And then your preliminary applied research proposal. And Mary, I was wondering if you wanted to speak a little bit to what would need to be included at that stage of the application.
Excuse me. Some universities require a full proposal and an identification of your committee members in the application. Ours is the opposite. I've already noted that the committee members don't have to be chosen until you're almost a year in. And it's very similar concept in relation to the applied research proposal. We want enough of a proposal to get a sense, I'm going to call it, of your academic thinking. Is it a project that is feasible? Is it a project that we have a sense that is fitting to the social sciences? And therefore, I encourage you to write it in an academic style. Use references, provide citations. Don't just say, I believe, but present it academically. And we know that you may change it. Some people take a 180 over the first year that they're in. But so it's much more so trying to get a sense of how you are approaching a topic and how you're thinking about it. So as best you can, say, this is what the topic is, and this is why I'm choosing it, is also very important. What is the issue or problem that has brought you to this point where you think that you could do a study that will help your sector or society or a group of people, say, for example, children. And we know that you can't really give any detailed methodology right now, but give a little bit of an attempt to say, here's some of the theories I might use. Here's some of the methods that I'm considering. For example, if I'm working in a school, I'm a teacher and I'm working in a school, is it going to involve interviewing teachers about new strategies during COVID? And so, it can be that straightforward. Just give us an idea of how you might approach it. And, 2 pages, 3 pages, 5 pages, it doesn't have to be terribly long, but you want to make sure that it's well written, because the committee members, adjudication committee members will be looking to see in your total package, particularly your writing and your writing sample, and your ability to communicate your ideas. Oh, one more thing. In that preliminary applied research proposal, say how it can relate to your career as you see it now, either your current career or what you might do differently if you had this degree. It's a question that I often ask people when they call me, if they're thinking about applying. I always want to know, well, again, it's a time-consuming thing to do, and you want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons for yourself, and that the research is going to have, some impact. It's change-oriented research.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mary. So for some key dates you'll want to note down, for the next intake date, that will be on January 10th, 2022, and the application deadline is coming up quite soon, October 10th, 2021, but there is intake dates further in advance or further out. If you do want to take a look at those, they're on our website as well if you want to plan for a future time, but If you are thinking about taking it soon, it's best to start getting those pieces of the application together so that can be submitted and we can assess your application as soon as possible. And then as well, Rhonda has one wonderful example of our enrollment team. She's been helping us here in the chat box today. So you're welcome to reach out to her if you have any questions. As well, here is our general contact information if you do want to reach out to our enrollment teams. So the top one there would be if you would like to reach out and you are a Canadian student, but if you'd be applying as an international student, you can reach out to learn.more.international@royalroads.ca. So they are there to help you with your journey through applying and everything like that and figuring out if this program is going to be the right one for you. And with that, we are going to wrap up the webinar for today. And thank you so much to everybody who stuck around. And for those that have needed to run, that is totally okay too. And then, yes, we will be sending out the link to the recording afterwards. So if you do want to refer back to any part of this, you will be able to do that pretty soon. Once I get it ready to go, I will email it out to everyone. So thank you again so much to our guests who were able to speak to their experiences in the program, and as well to everybody who was able to help behind the scenes to make the session to happen, and then to everybody who was able to watch today's session and who was interested in taking the program. It is so great to be able to have you all here today in the room asking such wonderful questions. So with that, Mary, is there any final words you'd like to share before we close out the session for today?
Just again, the importance of talking to Rhonda. If you're thinking of applying, she can, Rhonda's been with the university from the beginning and can really provide you detailed information. And of course, both the university as a whole, but also now specifically to the doctoral program. And don't hesitate to, send me an email. And I usually do my response by Zoom. Now, like just a little word of warning, sometimes it takes me a bit, but I'll eventually get there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mary. And everybody, we hope you have a wonderful day and we hope to see you sometime in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.